Welcome to the Modern Digital Enterprise, the digital transformation podcast from Anexinet. As you may know, Anexinet recently acquired Serene IT, an engineering and IT solutions firm and managed services provider. We're particularly excited about this acquisition since it greatly strengthens our breadth of offerings and innovative capabilities. Together, we're even better situated to serve clients of all sizes and sectors whose infrastructure needs are becoming increasingly complex. Our complementary capabilities will help your organization leapfrog the competition by transforming to reflect modern innovation. Today, we'll be talking about infrastructure automation with Serene IT Director of Automation Services George Carter and IT automation developer Thomas Breslin. Guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we get into our topic, why don't you just take a moment to tell the folks a little bit about what you do for Serene IT and how you got to where you are today in your digital journey. And George, why don't you start us off?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All right. So once again, my name is George Carter. I'm the Director of Automation for Anexinet. I started my digital journey shortly after an exodus from the military, and I recognized that I really needed to do something different. I had a very specific skill set that I wanted to execute with a lot of drive, and so AT&T and then eventually Hewlett-Packard, gave me an opportunity to demonstrate that. So I started out with those organizations in their backline Unix department, and then went from there to go on to HP Labs, Superdome team, and from there to continuity services, and eventually leading the global containerization business for DXC, both from an OpenStack and OpenShift perspective. One of the things that I really was passionate about was taking a process that engineers were executing manually, and we all do it, but executing those processes manually and then wrapping those processes into some sort of automation orchestration engine. And that basically helped us to be able to scale and be able to add value to our clients.
That's great. Thanks. Thomas, you are an IT automation developer for Anexinet.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are in your digital journey and what you currently do for Serene IT, now Anexinet.
It's a bit of a difficult question to answer because I haven't had probably the same introduction to the industry that a lot of people had. I actually was in college. I intended on going into a different industry more along the lines of programming microcontrollers and that sort of thing. So much more low-level hardware stuff. But I did enter the IT industry because that's the sort of thing I determined that I was passionate about, specifically automation. I'm very interested in automating things, not having to do a lot of busy work, because, sort of the way that I reached it was there's not really anything new in deploying a server, for example. It's been done thousands, hundreds of thousands of times before. There's a correct way to do it. And if you automate that, that's a lot of time saved because, there's no complex steps that have to vary. It's just you define it the way that you want it, and it'll ideally go out and deploy itself once you have that pipeline in place. So yeah, my whole thing was just saving time and making sure that everything's repeatable and consistent. And I just used that sort of as a tool when I was working in just general IT. So yeah, definitely passionate about that because I'm lazy and I don't like doing the same thing over and over again.
So, all right, let's get right into it. So today we're talking about infrastructure automation. And I know these days you hear about robotic process automation a lot. It's a big buzzword these days. So let's just clarify, what do you think it is that differentiates RPA from what we're going to be talking about today, which is infrastructure automation, or how are they similar?
They can have similarities at certain levels, all right, or certain aspects of them, but not all encompassing. So when we talk about RPAs from an automation perspective, what we're really basically focusing in on is being able to automatically respond to an event. Doesn't matter what the event is, right? It could be an error message, it could be a user request, but whatever that event is, what are the manual steps that a typical engineer would take to be able to resolve that event? And then our goal is to basically wrap that in automation to make it repeatable, predictable, to give you those results and the ROI that the company is looking for. And you can imagine the benefits of that. You know, when you think about the usual IT organization and all of the events that they have to respond to, if you can automatically respond to those events, maybe 75% of the time, think about the ROI to the organization. It is tremendous.
Great. So we have a lot of listeners who are sort of prefer things at a very high level. And maybe it's a little early to ask this question, but in our previous conversations, you guys have talked about stateless and immutable. And I don't know what those two terms mean, and I have a feeling they're going to come up again in today's conversation. So could you please define those for me now and maybe talk about how they play into automation as a preview for what's to come?
Well, okay, stateless would mean there is no state. There is no either implicit or explicit state in the whatever it is, and that's very, very abstract. So as an example, traditionally, you would have state in like a server deployment. Let's say, you have a server, it serves an application. So what you would do is you would go through the process of setting it up, and then you would configure the application on top of it. And then maybe you would make some changes to a config file or do something else on the server to kind of get it acting the way that you want. So the state there would be the application, its configuration, those things that you did to change it and get it working the way that you wanted to. That's all state. That's something that you did. And if someone then goes and changes something and maybe breaks it a little while down the line, then they've changed the state of it. And even worse, it's probably in an unknown state. You don't really know how it got there. Maybe after a couple of years and updates and config changes, no one would ever be able to find out what state it is in or prove that it's working correctly, really. So that would be state in an application or server. And then the stateless, of course, would mean once you set it up, you don't touch it. So there is no state. And the way that you would do that, without getting too much in the weeds, is with automation. You would define how it's supposed to be. It goes out and does it, and then you don't change it anymore, ideally. And then the other item, I believe you said stateless and immutable. So immutable would be the other side of that. In order for something to be stateless, it also needs to be immutable. And if something's immutable, it's also stateless. So they kind of go hand in hand, and that means you don't touch it. Once it's set up, you don't manually interfere with it. And if you do need to change something, you tear it all down and start over. And that way, if something changes, you don't go in and bring it into an unknown state. No one goes in and changes any config files or anything like that, or updates something manually, that sort of thing. You tear it all down and start over. And that way you know what state it's in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of how I look at it too. I mean, just from a very simplistic view, right? When we think about stateless and immutable, you're basically saying the same thing. In my mind, it basically means starting from scratch. That's it, starting from scratch, right? So whenever that process starts, it doesn't store or use any previously stored data in order to achieve an outcome, whether it be a business outcome or an automation outcome. Therefore, most automation will be idempotent. In other words, it can be called multiple times and be able to produce the same outcome because of the fact that it's stateless and immutable. So start from scratch is what I always like to think of.
Thanks, that's really helpful. So for clients who maybe don't fully understand what automation can do for their company and haven't really pursued it much because they don't realize the benefits, what first of all, what kinds of things is it possible for them to automate, like initially as a first run? And maybe what areas could be automated that they probably haven't considered as a possibility?
That's a great question. I mean, we typically like to say that, just about everything, I do use that term kind of loosely, just about everything can be automated from an IT perspective. So from a networking layer, that can be automated where you're basically automating your upgrades, your provisioning even. From OS layer, you're talking about automating things like upgrades, patching, etc. Even from a cloud layer where you're talking about managing your cloud infrastructure, deployment, automatic deployment of your cloud infrastructure, as well as decommissioning of your cloud infrastructure, all that can be automated. Applications can also be automated where you're talking about patching those applications, deprovisioning those applications, introducing new applications into your application stack. All of these things can be automated. And what we typically find out is that most companies have really not considered doing that just simply because they don't have the bandwidth. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, they recognize that we have to do these necessary business tasks in order to be profitable. And in order to achieve those business outcomes, they hire large armies of IT staff to accomplish that. However, they don't realize that that's not necessary. If you will simply automate those different areas, you can alleviate that IT burden. There's no reason to just fix the problem by adding more staff. You fix the problem by automating those routine processes that you're having to basically deal with.
And so when we talk about infrastructure automation, what kinds of processes are we talking about there?
Yeah, so infrastructure automation, I would say that what you're really automating is interacting with your hypervisor, and what that would be is whatever hosts all your virtual machines, and then the virtual machines themselves, which could be Windows or Linux, and then what they're doing, so their configuration and their applications, whatever they're serving up for their actual workload. And there's some advanced solutions to that, like Kubernetes is very popular, and it has less of a focus on virtual machines and more of a focus on the application. So it's a different way of looking at things with containers. But if you're having to automate traditional workloads on virtual machines, what it would look like if you were doing it manually is, okay, you make a new server on your hypervisor or your management console. That, if you're using VMware, you would do that in vCenter most likely. If you're using, some open source or more free options, like I think Proxmox is one of them. But either way, you're making a new virtual machine. You put in your disk, you install it, you configure it, you make a lot of manual steps, and at any given step in this, you could make a mistake. And for example, I know for VMware and vCenter, you would need to, for the best performance, pick a very specific type of disk for your virtual disk. And if you picked it wrong and then you went through the entire configuration process and you realized later, there's pretty much nothing you can do to go back and fix it. You would be better off just starting over from scratch. And mistakes like this can add up. And sometimes they might not even be noticed until much later. Then you run into, some sort of limitation like, oh, I picked the wrong partition scheme. I'm on MBR and not GPT. I can't go above 2 terabytes on my file server. That's not good. And then, things like that. So it is much better to, if you have that automated, in the sense that you define what you want, and then you have it go out and create it. And if you need to create it again or make a change, you destroy it, make it again. If it's automated, it's going to be the same every time. You're not going to overlook something or make a mistake. And I mean, really, when I was working on this, it seems like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. So just instantiating servers, that's something that I love HashiCorp's tools like Terraform and Packer, because there's a lot of low-hanging fruit, even if there's some things that are very, very onerous to automate. If you automate maybe even just 20% of the process, you save, a vast amount of time, because if you're doing everything manually and it's one server, it's great. Okay, maybe it takes you like, I don't know, 30 minutes to an hour. But if you have 500 and there's one person, there's not a lot you can do to make that go any faster other than, I guess, multiple monitors. Whereas if you have, some kind of automation tool set, and there are other options, then, Packer and Terraform, those just happen to be the ones that I use. I make a template for what I want to deploy, or multiple templates, and then instantiate all of them. It decouples the number of endpoints from, your actual work. Once you've configured them, it just goes and does it. So it decouples the scaling problem, I suppose, is what you would call it. And that's kind of what infrastructure automation is at a very, that's a simple introduction to a very big time saver that you can have with infrastructure automation, just automating the deployment of your infrastructure. I think that's a great place to start for just about any company that has to, reconfigure, change the way that their servers work. So, yeah.
Yeah, very good, Thomas. And we've worked with a lot of, enterprise class customers that had very large footprints from an infrastructure perspective. Yeah, I think a lot of organizations can kind of relate to this too, to where their ecosystem gets so large that they kind of lose control of it. No one wants to admit that, but they kind of lose control of it. What's out there, what has been deployed, what needs to be decommissioned. And as Thomas mentioned, whenever you automate those processes, that particular layer of management becomes that much more easier. You're able to keep a pulse on the organization, on your ecosystem, and know exactly what's been deployed. You know exactly these things are time, no one's used them. Let's decommission these elements to save cost, right? And it just really aids end to end.
That's great. Thank you, guys. I had this next question, but it seems like you guys already answered it. What can automating your infrastructure do for your organization? But it sounds like the advantages are huge time savings, accuracy, record keeping, and just the ability to create a repeatable process that's flawless. Also, it also sounds like companies, if a company wants to scale as you described, it sounds like automation is really like their only option. I mean, unless they want to hire 1 million people.
And that's it. I mean, and this global pandemic has really brought this particular issue into focus, if you will, right? To where you've now moved the entire workforce from a centralized locations, or perhaps many central locations, back to their homes, and you're still trying to run a business. Well, how do you do that? How do you basically able to accomplish that, and yet and be able to automate the entire process? And a lot of organizations are kind of running into roadblocks in that particular area. And so automation helps in that basically these deployments can be automated. The engineering staff, and this is what Thomas was kind of speaking to, so rather than the engineering staff, kind of focus on these, on these rudimentary processes that they need to be able to enable work from home, all that's automated. All right. So now it's not a matter of basically eliminating the workforce. It's a matter of enabling the workforce to be more proficient. So now they can focus on the key areas of the business, the areas that basically are a threat to the organization's survival. That's what they're able to focus on. So in other words, automation helps your IT staff to be more elite versus than being just rudimentary.
And you brought up an excellent point about the pandemic, and I'm wondering if the pandemic is also making it more necessary to have a third party help an organization manage their infrastructure. So just like if you could get into like what some of the advantages are of having a third party do it, why you feel that's necessary, how organizations benefit more from having a third party with their own knowledge base and tool sets come in.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, and I look at this, and once again, I look at it from a very simplistic perspective. I do apologize. I love to work on my automobiles. All right, I like to change my own oil, do the spark plugs. I really, enjoy, getting my fingers and hands dirty. However, I recognize that there are certain things that I'm just not going to be able to do. There are certain things that are not recreational. These are important. So therefore, when it comes down to basically the important tasks, the things that require a little bit level of expertise, I recognize that's not my wheelhouse. That's not what I do day in, day out. And I think from an IT perspective, it's the exact same way. Many organizations, that's not their core business. Their core business is perhaps telecommunications. Their core business is pharmaceutical. Their core business is medical. Don't know. All right. But they are not an IT engineering firm. They don't have, 20, 30 years of expertise in this area. That's not what they want to do either. So therefore, it makes more sense to, rather than have your IT staff, or to try to take your IT staff who is basically supporting what your vision is, what your desire is, rather than dividing that headcount, to now take some of them and then have them focus on development work, on automating processes. Rather than do that, why not just reach out to Anexinet? I mean, we have the wheelhouse. That is our passion. That's our wheelhouse. So reach out to that organization to where you can get their experts engaged to be able to automate those processes and allow your engineering staff to be able to support you in your core vision.
That one really resonates with me because we have you're a car guy, so we have a 91 Volkswagen Vanagon Westie that has a Nissan Maxima engine in it. And I take pride in the fact that I can do very minor electrical things on it, like fix lights and stuff. And I can clean up the inside of the thing. But the other day, the reverse light stopped working, and I did some research, and I thought, oh my God, I figured it out. It's this reverse light switch, and it looks really easy to swap it out. And I ordered one and got under the car and actually got it out and swapped it out and was so excited. And then it turned out that was not the problem. So it's going to have to go to the mechanic so they can do a thorough wiring check and see what's going on, because basically the car is being held together with zip ties at this point, duct tape and zip ties.
I mean, yeah, that's exactly. I mean, there are certain things that we enjoy doing, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, when it becomes serious, you need to kind of tap the expert in and let them take it over. And you end up spending less time, less revenue to get that problem resolved if you would have tried to do it in-house.
I keep reading that and hearing that automation frees up your IT department to, focus on the future. You hear different phrases, focus on the future or focus on more important things than just keeping the lights on. You kind of see that phrase a lot. So how does automating and outsourcing, what are some of the things that it frees up your IT team to do? What do you feel like some more important tasks for IT team would be once you automate away the busy work?
The only way that anyone can really get good at anything is practice, right? I mean, when you see something 100 times and you practice it 100 times, you're better at it than the first time, obviously. Automation is one of those things where if you've decided to embark on that path, there are things about it that, well, the whole thing about known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, it kind of leads to the rule of thumb where you're always going to add a third of time to a project for, hangups that you did not foresee, things like that. If you've resolved to take your IT department and start learning how to automate things, That's great. That's a great first step. There are things that you'll be able to save more time than you thought by automating things. But really, as you start automating more and more, you will find that after that first 80% of the tasks that you're trying to automate are done, the difficulty spikes up incredibly quickly. I believe that there's probably a good opportunity to say that you would be able to save 80% of the time by automating 20% of the overall tasks that your IT department does. A good example of the Pareto rule that I love to bring up, but really finishing that and having an end-to-end solution is extraordinarily difficult. Having something fully end-to-end a workflow that does everything is very, very difficult. So I would say, you can't really, it isn't feasible to automate absolutely everything. So that's why when you can automate, a lot of the repetitive tasks that everyone in your IT department right now would be spending most of their time doing, they can be freed up to do some of the more complex tasks that are either, unfeasible or just shouldn't be automated at all. And they really require, the human touch, the human to determine what's going on. Like, for example, maybe if you're a software company and you're working on delivering an application, this would be a good example of it. Like what you would automate, basically, what we would go in and automate is, your deployment and testing pipeline. So there are many tests, many tests in any given application that need to be run to kind of not really prove whether it's working, but give you a good idea whether a change that you just made broke something that was already fixed, that sort of thing. I think that's regression testing. So if you automate that and you don't have to go through the manual process of testing that, which would be the worst case, or initiating those tests yourself in a semi-automated way, if you can have that all automated away, then you can test more complicated cases that maybe can't really be tested in an automated manner. Just something like you looking at it and doing edge cases based on what you, as the author of that software, changed, that sort of thing. So more of an expert looking at it. That'd be the sort of thing that you'd be able to focus on more, because you aren't spending that time, which is basically a repetitive tax, making sure that you didn't break something else. I think that'd be a good example of that if you were a software developer. Obviously, depending on the industry, what you would be working on as IT personnel or other personnel, now that you're spending less time on a task that's been automated away, it would vary widely. But I think that's a good example.
And what about security? When we talk about automating security, I think this is your wheelhouse, George. What exactly can be automated? And is this also like an important area with coronavirus and remote workforces and so forth?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this kind of goes back to almost what Thomas was just speaking to. When you think about an IT organization or any organization basically securing their infrastructure, especially for remote workers, it has to basically bubble up towards the top of the list. So we're talking about keeping the infrastructure secure from a network layer. That's really what it all boils down to, as well as protecting the end user, the endpoints, this IT organization or any organization, keeping their remote users safe from introducing anything into the infrastructure which could be harmful. So automating a lot of these processes eliminates really just armies of engineers trying to respond to certain kind of events. The first and foremost that we've kind of seen in this particular space is, especially when COVID kind of started and everyone shifted out to the home, is basically a lot of organizations realize that, oh my goodness, our networking infrastructure is not configured properly in order to be able to support this kind of outside access. So how do you fix that? Well, we have X number of engineers to kind of shore up these gaps. Well, let's hire more engineers to kind of accelerate. Well, see, that's not really the best method, right? So automating that process has helped a lot of organizations to be able to, tighten up the ship, so to speak, so that they can support a large army of remote workers. In addition, you have these endpoints, all right, these endpoints that are basically accessing the organization. How do you ensure that they're safe? How do you ensure that they're able to basically do their work from their location without introducing, harmful actors into the infrastructure. Once again, you could lean towards, a head count of basically, trying to resolve that, or you could automate those processes. What we found out is that a lot of organizations already had the blueprint, if you will, all right, for how to shore up their organization. And the blueprint was basically have a team of engineers execute these things, or perhaps these things were in their backlog and they just haven't quite gotten to them. But because of the global pandemic, now they need to get to them. Well, how do you basically accelerate that backlog? It's not through headcount. It really isn't. Because even if you added the headcount, by the time that headcount got sufficiently trained to support the backlog, probably the pandemic will be over. All right. It just would not be sufficient. It won't scale. So you need to basically reach out to organizations who specialize in this so they can automate that backlog in order to get the organization to a point to where it can support that staff. Now, that said, even though you automate, 75, 80% of the backlog, it doesn't necessarily mean that your IT staff is now just sitting there idle. That's not it. As I mentioned before, now what they're able to do is they're able to really focus in on the core problems, the things that are unique to your organizations, the things that the things that are value add, if you will, to your IT infrastructure that perhaps are even a threat to your IT infrastructure. That kind of frees them up. It lets them focus on those things, and it helps the organization scale faster.
That's great. This might be I'm not sure how relevant to this conversation, but I'm just wondering, we're hearing so much about these Russian hacks right now, and I'd love to get you guys on another conversation for a more in-depth podcast on that topic. But just for now, I'm just wondering if there's any relevance, or if it's not too early and we don't know enough yet, but if there's any relevance to our clients who may be concerned that they've been somehow compromised by these Russian hacks, if they can somehow benefit by reaching out to us for some automation or some other security help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I certainly understand that. I know a lot of organizations have been impacted by this. What we have seen thus far, and this is pretty much typical of every exploit that we've seen, whether it be ransomware or whatever. All right. Our security teams will typically put out, this is what you need to do in order to ensure that your corporation, your IT infrastructure is not susceptible. Doesn't mean that it's foolproof, but basically these are the best practices to ensure that you're not susceptible to this type of exploit, whatever it may be. All right. Now, you have these series of steps, these things that you must do in order to mitigate your risk. Now, how long will it take for an organization that basically is spanning globally to implement these checks? Sometimes it would take months for them to implement these checks. And most organizations just simply cannot risk that. It takes too long. It would take an army of whomever to be able to do all these checks. And that's exactly why Anexinet is a value add here, because we can accelerate, we can automate those processes once they're known in order to basically augment your IT staff. That way your IT staff isn't, they're not stopping their day-to-day, all right? Because you have to have IT staff to support your, to support you day-to-day. They don't have to stop that. In order to now, let's shift into threat response mode and see if we're vulnerable. They can focus on day-to-day and allow Anexinet to automate these checks in their environment to make sure that they are indeed safe.
That takes us right into a question that I had about why folks maybe should pick Anexinet over other companies. Now that the Serene IT is part of Anexinet, and welcome, guys, to Anexinet. Should maybe have said that right off the bat. But one of the things I keep hearing about a Serene IT is that you offer something called tailored managed services. So just wondering, what does that mean exactly? What are we tailoring? Why is that something to boast about? Why is it important when it comes to automating your infrastructure?
I've also worked on the managed services side. I mean, the difference is tailored managed services, it's what it says on the tin. There isn't a one size fits all solution. So we've worked with a few unusual clients to sort of sort out their managed services needs. It isn't just like everybody needs, virtual desktops. We don't sell like all-in-one solutions for someone's business. Everyone's needs are different, and that's sort of what that is. It's like, what do you need done, and then how can we help you get there? I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to name drop the company, but there is a project that we were working on for basically, well, it's sort of an automation and managed services project for getting some speed test servers. So these are, you know, infrastructure for the speed test application, the UCLA speed test. So we're doing automation to get them set up and then managed services to make sure that they are running properly and keep running properly. That's fairly unusual in terms of the sort of work that we normally receive, but what it is at its core is, we designed the solution and we're going to maintain it, monitor it, that sort of thing. And it's a custom solution. And that's kind of the difference. I'm not going to say normally, but in many cases that I've seen, what it would be is sort of a standard solution on your own. Like the solution designer would make their choices on what hardware and software to use. This is sort of, what are your business needs? How can we tailor what we offer as managed services personnel to make sure that your solution works?
Yeah, that's basically it, Thomas. Yeah. And I just want to add on to that. I mean, when when you think about what was achieved, in the engagement that Thomas just mentioned, right? So everyone from the consumer down to the engineer who is at the customer site, perhaps deploying something. And I won't say what it is, deploying something. They have a need to be able to test speed. All right. How fast is this device, this appliance, whatever, able to interact with, the internet? All right. What's my thresholds? How am I doing? And when you think about being able to not only do that, but then now be able to replace all of the endpoints that support that kind of activity in the Americas, across the Americas. All right. We're talking everywhere. All right. So we were able to basically accomplish that task via automated deployment. All right. And then we're also going to be able to support those servers from an automation perspective in our managed services offering. Now, once again, that's a very customized, tailored approach. And that's exactly what tailored managed services is. All right. We're not a WEDO, all right, which is a walk-in takeover. We're not trying to take over someone's IT organization. But when you have those very specific niches, if you will, to where you need a force multiplier, someone to come in to either augment your IT staff or someone to come in and please take this problem for me. I don't do this. My business is X and this is Y. That's when you ring Anexinet's phone, because we can basically offer both of those solutions, either take that problem from you or serve as that force multiplier to your IT staff to help you accomplish the business needs.
Do we have any more ROI data on that specific client? Just wondering, just to give people an example of how much automation can benefit them.
Not on that specific client, other than, of course, that, when you're talking about mass deployments across the Americas, and we're talking about not only setting up the servers, automating, how the servers function, and then getting those servers to site, and then automating the actual deployment piece of the servers. I mean, yeah, I mean, typically before that would probably have been a 6 month to a 1 year engagement. And we essentially did it in about 2, maybe 3 months tops. We just wrapped it up. But I'm more thinking of another client that we help with upgrading automation, right? And this is just another niche case, right? This is that tailored managed services approach to where they were faced with a large IT ecosystem that spanned across the Americas once again. And when you think about that, think about basically multiple data centers across the Americas. These data centers having a very diverse vendor, right? So we're talking Hewlett Packard, we're talking Dell and Cisco, all kinds of different type of appliances out there. And now you think about a specific team, and I mean a team of an army of engineers that is responsible for upgrades. My job as a team is to upgrade this vast ecosystem of endpoints. And it was basically taking a team, an army of engineers, about a year, 18 months, or it's about a year and a half to complete an upgrade cycle. Now, I kind of want that to resonate. About 18 months to complete an upgrade cycle. And I think that's probably typical for a lot of large enterprise clients. The problem with that is by the time you upgrade, you're already 2 revisions back. By the time you complete 18 months, you're already at least 2 revisions back on most vendors. All right. So you're in this process of constantly being behind. And the only way to fix that from most, IT organizations' perspective, the only way to fix that is to add headcount. All right. Let us add, another 100 engineers, and maybe we can stay 1 revision back. Let us add 200, and maybe we can stay current. Well, that's really not feasible. That's not sustainable. And so what we were able to do was come in with our DevOps engineers and to look at what they were doing and then take what they were doing end to end, all right, single pane of glass, easy button push, right, and be able to automate their entire process. Now, what was the results of that? The results were that we took that 18th month process and brought it down to 3. And I say 3 kind of reluctantly because the only reason it was 3 is because that was as comfortable as their change management was as far as going fast. That was it. All right. We could have went way faster than that. We could have basically upgraded their entire ecosystem in a button click. All right. But they need change management. They want to go slow. They want to be controlled. Understand that. So about 3 months. So we can go as fast as the client needs. And the value of that. So think about that. Now you're not basically relying on an army of engineers. You're not waiting on a year and a half upgrade process. You're able to basically use a handful of engineers, all right, and a 3-month process to upgrade your ecosystem. Now the other engineers are able to focus on your customer base, which is where your value is, right? They're able to focus on that. And you have just an elite core of engineers who are basically hitting the easy button to keep you safe and to keep you current, from an upgrade perspective.
That's awesome. And I talked about this a little bit, but I'm wondering if some clients or some company departments, hearing about how amazing automation is might naturally become concerned about for their own jobs. So how do we go in and, what do you say to these clients to reassure them that we are only there to augment their staff, and how do we convince them that we're there to work with them and not without them?
Oh yeah. And I think I mentioned in my intro that I've been in this industry about 25 years now, and I started out as an HPUX engineer, and we had pretty much an unspoken rule in Unix engineering, right? And that is, if you did a task 3 or more times, then please automate the task. Please script it, do something to help the next person out. And that's really what we're bringing to the table. As I mentioned, we're not a WEDO. We don't walk in, take over an IT organization. And really the automation serves to augment, not replace, but to augment the IT staff. It gives them a tool that they can now utilize to lessen their workload. It's not a takeover. All right. So I know if you know, you know, it's kind of back to that whole car analogy that we were talking about earlier. If I'm working on my vehicle and I've got a very specific bolt that I'm trying to work with, and I've got a pair of pliers, well, I could probably do more damage than good. However, if someone walks in and gives me a specific socket that fits that bolt and I can do my job easier, I'm not going to complain against the individual who gave me that, because now they're making me more efficient in my job. And that's really what automation does. It's not a staff aug. It's not a replacement to your IT staff. It really gives your IT staff the tools that they need to be efficient, to be elite in the IT industry.
Great. So, with all the benefits that we've mentioned, and I'm wondering what it is that's still holding companies back from automating. Earlier, you mentioned bandwidth as just being a huge factor. Are there any other reasons why companies are holding back on automating?
I think that's it. I mean, you think about bandwidth, you think about, fear of job security, just to mention a few. If I am a large, pharmaceutical company and I have 100 IT professionals, their primary focus is to keep me basically selling and or supporting pharmaceutical relations. That's it. That's what their focus is. All right. Now, they themselves have to ensure that the underlying infrastructure is able to support me in my business objectives. Now, when I think of that 100-man army that I mentioned, or those 100 professionals that I mentioned, all right, and they start getting backlogged. They have all these things that they need to do to support me in my core business vision. Okay, so now I got a problem. How do I fix that problem? Well, a lot of times, clients, sadly, they just keep doing the same thing. All right, add it to the backlog. We'll get to it. Add to the backlog. We'll get to it. This is more priority. All right, escalate that and address that first. But when you think about operating that way, you are really, you're really kind of defeating the purpose. You're never going to catch up. You're never going to keep you're never going to keep the IT infrastructure up to date or current enough to be able to compensate for the business needs. You're also going to lead yourself vulnerable to the latest malware, ransomware threats that are out there. They get into this cycle to where they just simply cannot stay current. So how do you fix that problem? Well, a lot of organizations, like I mentioned, their solution is add more staff. Just add more staff. Just add more engineers to the problem and see if that fixes it. And that's really not efficient. The more efficient way is to bring in someone like Anexinet to analyze the business problem and then to outline, okay, from this problem that you're having from your ecosystem, these are the areas that we can automate. Help us, allow us to take this IT burden off your plate. All right. And then automate this piece of it. And you can immediately see the benefits of that. So a lot of companies really hesitate to basically automate because of those reasons. All right. Number one, they're so focused on their core business, which it should be. Number two, they don't have the staff. Or number three, they don't have the revenue to be able to double their IT staff in order to catch up. And that's why most organizations need to automate, really, whether they recognize it or not. Automation is a part of the modern IT ecosystem.
And also more about why they need a third party to come in and help them do it, sounds like.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, so my IT staff, if I'm that large, pharmaceutical company, my IT staff is basically focused on supporting my IT infrastructure, period. That's it. If I have HP Reliance, if I have Dell, if I have whatever, Cisco systems, They're focused on keeping those systems alive to keep us in business. All right. Now think about this. Now I'm thinking about automating. If I'm thinking of automating in order to relieve that burden to my IT staff, if I'm thinking of basically turbocharging my IT environment by introducing automation, I now have to basically either hire a pool of seasoned developers. All right, we're not talking about college hires, we're talking about seasoned developers, or I now need to basically take a subgroup of my IT staff. Keep in mind, they're already stressed, they're already under a lot. I need to take a group of those individuals and now train them to be DevOps engineers. All right, neither solution approach is really practical. All right, at Anexinet, we have over 100 developers, all right, that focus in on this area. My team alone, we have multiple patents. Most of our engineers, they have publications under their belt. And this is what they do day in out. Our focus is automating business outcomes. So rather than trying to, assign this to your already stressed IT staff, all right, let Anexinet come in. We can analyze what the burden is, automate the elements that you deem that need to be automated, and you'll be able to basically have that ROI faster, because this is what we do. This is our wheelhouse. This is what we've done for enterprise clients for quite a long time.
That's the thing. Like, we get to where we are because we stand on the shoulders of giants and so on and so forth. No one gets to where they are by themselves. And in many cases, it's a huge undertaking to start trying to automate some of these things. There was a book I was reading. I would name drop the book if I could remember the name of it. Actually, I think it's the Practice of IT System Administration or something like that. Basically, the fellow said, you kind of have two options, but sometimes it really only feels like you have one. You can drop what you're doing, acknowledge the fact that you can't keep up with the workload or what is being done, and try to automate part of that. But obviously that requires an immediate upfront investment before you see any return on it. And when you have a growing backlog of items, sometimes that might just literally not be feasible. Maybe you can't do that. Maybe you physically can't do that and, have your obligations met for your department. It just might not be possible. And the other one is, well, we can throw more time and people at the backlog to stay afloat. And that's a very easy trap to fall into. And, pretty much what we're offering here is we've already gone through the pain of developing that expertise through practice to get these things automated. So we can do that additional lift, that project, to automate the work that is contributing to the backlog. And that makes a huge difference.
George and Thomas, I want to thank you both for coming on today. I know how busy you both are, and I really appreciate the time that you've given me here. In the last few minutes, what I like to do is talk about the art of the possible, a little look towards the future. So the question is, what do you feel that we're currently doing, Serene IT and Anexinet is currently doing, versus like what you think we're capable of doing, or what you would really like to see companies doing, what you envision, the ideal client automating? I'm not sure how to phrase it.
That's a great question. It's a very broad question. But, just coming just purely from an administrator's perspective, right? For years as an IT administrator, there were certain things that I just did day in and day out that were just mind numbing, right? Things that, oh man, I got to do this again. Or you recognize that, oh, I know what that problem is, and these are the steps to do it. That was the mind numbing piece of my obligation. The exciting things were the things that were new. right? The things, oh, I hadn't saw that before. I would definitely like to kind of do, a root cause analysis as to why that problem is occurring and what's going on there. And that's really what, if I had to define what our dream job is, right, is to help IT administrators do just that. All right, to keep them excited in their roles, to kind of keep them excited into looking at, oh, that is a unique troubleshooting opportunity, if you will. I want to dig into that. And less of this is the routine. I've seen that before. I know what the fix is there. You see, that's where automation comes in. All right. So we want to automate those pieces of it for any IT organization to kind of alleviate that burden off of them and then allow their IT staff, as I mentioned before in the outs, really, to become more elite, to kind of stay focused, to kind of be excited about the root cause analysis to whatever challenge that they're facing. So for most IT administrators, if you tell them, okay, we need to deploy, I don't know, we need to deploy a few hundred VMs inside of a cloud provider. I won't mention which one, but inside of a cloud provider's environment, and we need to tag it and needs to have this, that, and the other. They can do that. All right, they can do it manually. Yes, they can. And they would basically spend weeks, maybe even months doing that very, just painstaking task to accomplish that ask. But why not automate that? Why not basically take that burden off of their shoulders, automate that process by allowing Anexinet to come in and take care of that for them, and then they can basically take care of really the day 2, day 3 operations. Okay, I'm having a unique problem with this particular instance. All right, what's going on there? Or I'm having an issue with this particular security appliance. We have a breach, or we have something along those lines. Help me troubleshoot that. That's what basically we bring to the table. I mean, I've seen the movies too, right? So, AI comes in and eliminates all the humans. That's not it. All right. It really, AI comes in, or automation comes in to take care of the rudimentary tasks that your IT organization would be burdened with, that would be basically providing, that would kind of cloud their vision, and removing all that so that they can focus in on what your core business objectives are. And that's really the best, well, excuse the term, that is really the best bang for the buck for the industry.
Yeah, I'd agree with that and jump in and say, what it really is, what contributes to someone getting burnt out in the IT industry? It's repetitive tasks that you keep having to do and they keep coming back. And maybe that you just don't have time to get the root cause sorted just now, but that you will soon, almost definitely. But other things keep coming up, priorities, it just gets away from you and you feel like you aren't getting anywhere. That's probably the worst feeling that you can have in many different industries, but definitely in the IT industry, yeah, that's not good. And the way that you can get ahead of that, you can reduce the amount of effort that you need to put forth and make that initial investment to get those things sorted out so you can focus on what really matters is automating it. Because if you've done it more than 3 times, you don't need to be doing it anymore. You probably know how to sort it out already. Everyone knows how to sort it out already. So, yeah, get rid of it.
Those are really awesome answers. Final question. Where do you see infrastructure automation going in the future? Where do you think this technology is headed for organizations?
I use the term lights out pretty loosely, but I really think that's where it's going. All right. Where an organization or an IT entity is tasked with providing whatever. All right. I need to provide an ecosystem for my developers that includes, X number of virtual machines, with load balancers, firewalls, the whole 9 yards, and be able to, okay, I understand the ask, and then I press a button or I execute whatever, and it provides that ecosystem for those, for those individuals. That's really where I see it going. And for the most part, like I said, previously, that when the IT professional is executing that button, that doesn't eliminate their role. Someone needs to push the button, but then also someone needs to be the expert. Someone needs to be able to have the technical prowess to be able to dig into when things go wrong, because, well, things go wrong, right? So that's where I see the IT industry going, to where a lot of these rudimentary, these noise makers that we see, especially in our pandemic state that we live in right now, these noise makers are eliminated by automation, and then our IT, staff become elite. They basically become very adept at root cause analysis, troubleshooting, figuring out where these anomalies are occurring, and being able to mitigate them quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if computers were gonna take over our jobs, none of us would have jobs by now.
That's right. I think there's an old expression, right? Who will guard the guards? It's a Latin proverb, right? Right. There you go. So someone needs to be around to watch the guards.
Isn't it who watches the watchers?
It's the same thing. It's the same one, yeah. Who watches the watchers? Who guards the guards? Yeah.
Do you think it's going to get to the level of that eventually voice will be brought into it, so somebody can just ask their Alexa device to do something, and the process will just get more and more complex that these things can do?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If I wanted to be trivial, I could probably say, hey, and then I won't say the name of the object over there, or it'll wake up. But I mean, I could probably figure out in an afternoon how to make it give me a VM or something, do something useful. So yeah, I mean, why not? If it's more convenient in someone's use case to be using voice commands for it, I mean, that's just another way of interacting with things. But I mean, something really cool would be, because all these home assistants and voice assistants, they come with their own little automation and workflow tool sets. If you could do something like automate around telemetry that you're getting from an environment or something, like with Internet of Things stuff. I know it's a buzzword, but it is kind of interesting to think if you could use some of that as hooks into that, that'd be really cool. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I agree, Thomas.
Well, George and Thomas, thanks again. I really appreciate coming on. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you keeping it at a first floor level for me and for our listeners out there. Is there anything else that you want to add before we close?
We at Anexinet, we have a great passion for this kind of work, automation services. A lot of organizations have brought us in to see, what the art of the possible is. In other words, what can you do for us? This is our pain points. Then I just want to mention that oftentimes when they do that, they are surprised that not only can we, alleviate their pain points, but we also talk about other things that can be automated. And they're like, wow, I didn't know that we could automate that piece of it. And that would really help us out a bunch. So yeah, don't hesitate to kind of bring us into the conversation. I mean, we're more than willing to listen, to be helpful, and we are a very integrity-based business, in that we'll tell you that, well, listen, you have automated everything that you can automate, and really we can't add any value here. But we'll also be very open and honest with letting you know that okay, these areas you should really focus in on, bringing automation to bear to give you the best ROI, to give you, a very positive customer experience, to give you a fast, resilient workforce in order to be able to be sustainable in the industry that we live in.
Right. You don't know what we can do until you get us in the door.
That's it.
I really appreciate that I have this introduction to both of you, and I really look forward to working with you more and doing some more podcasts down the line. You guys were really great guests. Thanks again. Have a great day.
All right. Perfect. Glad for being here. Thank you.
As a leading technology consultancy and reseller, Anexinet helps clients provide a complete digital experience for customers, employees, and end users. We accomplish this through our holistic approach, which encompasses all aspects of today's digital journey, end-to-end. Anexinet partners with top technology vendors like HPE to offer products and services that enhance the digital experience across customer engagement, enterprise mobility, cloud and hybrid IT, and analytics. Because great digital experiences rely on the smooth operation of all interconnected elements. From strategy through execution, we deliver custom multi-channel applications, including web, mobile, chat, and voice. With self-service apps for customer loyalty and enterprise apps that streamline internal processes, now you can reimagine legacy applications to propel your business forward. Anexinet also helps you embrace modern cloud and hybrid IT infrastructure to provide a seamless experience at every touchpoint, empowering you to recover quickly from disaster, scale to meet demand, and automate systems for perfect performance 24/7. And to maximize your competitive advantage, we ensure you always deliver the best experience possible by continuously honing your digital solutions through data-driven insights. So, how do you know if your business has what it takes to provide the complete digital experience? One that sets you apart, maintains competitive edge, and turns users into passionate fans? Simple. Just give us a call. Together, we can deepen engagement and make every digital experience remarkable.
Oh, I got confused, Tom. I thought you were out. Sorry.
Yeah, don't call me Tom. Only romantic situations call for that name.
Oh my goodness.
Don't put that in the podcast.
Please edit that out, please.
Maybe leave it in. I don't know.